Their emotions keep getting stronger. Their silence grows heavier. The pressure inside them keeps building little by little until they reach a moment where they have to decide. They can finally say what has been buried, or they can keep carrying that truth alone. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear may explain why this person was pulled toward you, why they never truly let go, and why the words they may one day speak come from a place deeper than you ever guessed. If this already feels personal, there may be a reason for that. Maybe part of you has felt this bond for a long time. Maybe something in you has known there was more to this story than anyone ever said out loud. And the truth is, the reason behind it is not simple. It is not ordinary. It is not the kind of thing people forget and move on from like it meant nothing. Think about it for a second. What if the person who cannot stop thinking about you is not fighting attraction at all? What if they have been wrestling with a truth they spent months, maybe years, trying to ignore? What if your presence changed something so deeply inside them that no distance, no silence, no distraction could make it go away? That happens more than people realize. The strongest connections are often the ones people resist the hardest. They do not welcome them, they push them away. They deny them. They tell themselves it is nothing. But deep down, something keeps calling them back. And if you have ever felt that strange pull too, then listen closely, because what comes next may explain more than you expected. A lot of people think love is random. They tell themselves it is timing, chemistry, luck, or chance. They believe people walk into our lives through normal days and ordinary accidents. But if you look closer at human nature, you start to notice something deeper. Some people arrive and leave a mark that logic cannot fully explain. Their presence feels familiar before it should. Their energy reaches hidden places inside us that words can barely touch. When someone chooses you in a way that goes far beyond appearance or surface attraction, it is often because something inside them recognized something inside you long before their mind could make sense of it. That is the mystery people keep trying to understand. Why does one person stand out when there are billions in the world? Why does one voice stay in your head? Why does one presence feel calming, powerful, and impossible to forget? Why do memories of them come back again and again, even when you try to move on? Why does their absence create a deeper ache than the presence of so many others ever did? The answer usually lives far below the surface. Every person carries empty spaces inside, hidden fears, quiet hopes, old wounds, unanswered questions, parts of themselves still waiting to grow. And very often, we feel drawn to people who reflect the very qualities we need to discover in ourselves. That is why some bonds feel intense from the start, not because the other person is perfect, not because the timing is magical, but because they wake up something that has been sleeping inside us for a very long time. And once that part wakes up, it does not go back to sleep easily. This person did not choose you because it was easy. They were drawn to you because your presence moved them in ways they could not ignore. Without meaning to, you touched pieces of them they had buried years ago. You woke up emotions they thought they had already controlled. The walls they built to stay guarded stopped working the way they used to. Staying numb became impossible. And that is what makes this different from so many other connections. Many people can get someone's attention. Very few can create real change inside another person without even trying. You became a mirror. And mirrors are powerful because they show truths people spend years trying not to face. When this person looked at you, they did not just see who they already were. They caught a glimpse of who they could become. Your kindness showed them how much loneliness they were still carrying. Your strength quietly revealed the places where they still felt unsure. Your honesty challenged the masks they had worn for far too long. That is one reason forgetting you has never been simple for them. People forget short excitement, they forget shallow moments, they forget easy conversations, but they rarely forget an experience that wakes something deep in the heart. They know this was never just about feeding the ego. This connection invited growth. It pushed them to become different. And the human spirit is always drawn to what can transform it, even when that transformation feels scary. So if their actions ever seemed mixed, if their energy ever felt close one moment and distant the next, do not stop here, because what looked like confusion may have been something much deeper. What makes this even more powerful is that you may not fully realize how deeply you affected them. The people who leave the strongest mark often never see the full impact they had. They just live honestly. They carry their own pain without placing it on everyone else. They move through disappointment without becoming bitter. They keep going after hard moments. They stay kind even when life gave them plenty of reasons not to. In a world where so much feels fake, realness becomes unforgettable. That is what this person saw when they looked at you. Not perfection, something far more valuable, something real. And truth always leaves a mark. Many people spend most of their lives looking for something genuine, something they can trust without constantly doubting it. When they finally find that kind of honesty in another person, it creates two feelings at once. Comfort, because it feels right. Fear, because real connection asks people to be honest with themselves. It removes the excuses they have leaned on for years. It forces them to look at parts of life they kept avoiding. It makes them question old beliefs that once felt safe. That is exactly what happened when you entered this person's world. Without knowing it, you challenged the image they had built of who they thought they were. Maybe they convinced themselves they did not need anyone. Maybe they believed distance was safer than closeness. Maybe they saw vulnerability as weakness instead of strength. They may have spent years protecting themselves by never letting anyone get too close. Then you appeared, and suddenly the rules they lived by no longer felt solid. The walls began to crack. And once those cracks appeared, everything started to change. Your presence created a battle inside them they could not easily explain. Part of them wanted to come closer because being with you felt natural. Another part wanted to run because real closeness felt unfamiliar. One side wanted love. The other wanted protection. One side imagined what life could become with you in it. The other could only think about avoiding pain. That is why their behavior may have confused you. People often pull away from the very thing they secretly want the most. Not because it means nothing, not because it is weak, but because it carries the power to change everything. A deep emotional bond does not just bring happiness, it also wakes fear. It shines light on insecurities that stayed hidden for years. It opens emotional wounds that never fully healed. It brings old memories back to the surface. It asks people to face truths they would rather leave buried. Still, there is something strange and powerful about meaningful connections. No matter how hard someone tries to escape them, they often find a way back. A memory shows up in the middle of an ordinary day. A song suddenly feels different. A dream lingers after waking. A place they once visited brings your face back into their mind. These moments are hard to explain because they happen below conscious thought. The mind may try to move on, but the heart remembers what mattered. And when a connection reaches the deepest parts of a person's inner world, logic is rarely enough to erase it. So being chosen on this level has very little to do with looks, success, popularity, or perfection. It is about resonance. It is about recognition. It is about feeling seen in a way that almost never happens. And if that idea hits home, stay with this, because the deeper truth is only starting to unfold. Many people notice what can be seen on the outside: beauty, confidence, charm, presence, but only a few connect with the person underneath all of that. Those rare connections leave permanent change because they touch the heart instead of stopping at the surface. This person is slowly reaching a point where denying what they feel is becoming impossible. What is growing inside them is not just affection. It is the realization that meeting you changed something in them. Their confession, if it comes, will not only be about love. It will be about transformation. It will be an admission that your presence changed how they see themselves, how they see relationships, and even how they see life. Maybe the real tragedy is not rejection. Maybe it is meeting someone who wakes the deepest part of your soul and never finding the courage to tell them how much they mattered. The people who change us most are often the ones we never plan to meet. They arrive quietly, yet they leave an impact that lasts for years. They become mirrors that show us strength we forgot we had. They expose fears we never admitted. They push growth we never expected. That is why relationships are so fascinating. Not because feelings exist. Feelings are common. What makes them powerful is how people respond to them. Many think love is welcome the moment it arrives. Real life often says otherwise. The deeper the feeling gets, the stronger the urge to hide it. A real bond threatens the illusion of control. It breaks old habits. It disturbs routines that once felt safe. It asks us to leave familiar ground and step into uncertainty. And that uncertainty can feel terrifying. That is exactly what happened here. Their feelings became impossible to ignore, yet too overwhelming to accept without fear. So they tried to escape, not because it was fake, because it was real. The human heart carries hope and fear at the same time. Whenever someone finds a connection that can change them, those two forces begin to fight. One part moves closer, another part pulls back. One side reaches for love, the other reaches for safety. The result is hesitation, mixed signals, emotional conflict that nobody on the outside can easily understand. If their actions ever left you asking what was going on, remember this. You were not watching someone who felt nothing. You were watching someone trying to understand feelings they had never faced in quite this way before. They were not only questioning how they felt about you, they were questioning what your presence showed them about themselves. Their silence was not always empty. Their distance was not always rejection. Very often, it was proof of a battle happening deep inside. A battle between fear and hope, between old habits and new possibilities, between staying safe and allowing something real. And battles like that are almost never visible from the outside. People only see hesitation. Inside, an entire world is shifting. That is why this bond kept surviving through silence. The harder they tried to ignore it, the stronger it quietly became. The more they focused on moving on, the more reminders seemed to appear. Life has a strange way of bringing deep lessons back to us until we finally understand them. Some connections do not disappear just because we decide they should. Some people stay in our hearts because they woke something that still needs to be understood. Sometimes they remain because they became part of our growth. Sometimes they stay because they showed us a version of ourselves we had never seen before. And maybe that is where this story truly begins. Not with attraction, not with timing, not with chance, but with recognition. Quiet, undeniable recognition. Recognition is often soft. It does not always come with dramatic moments or perfect words. Sometimes it begins as a feeling that refuses to leave. No matter how hard someone tries to explain it away, it keeps returning until it demands attention. That is what has been happening inside this person for a long time. They thought they could ignore it. They told themselves time would make it fade. They hoped distance would bring clarity. They believed silence would make the emotions disappear. Instead, the opposite happened. Every step away only reminded them of what they were leaving behind. Every distraction worked for a moment, then their thoughts returned to you. Every new experience was quietly measured against the bond they had already known. That is what happens when someone leaves a lasting imprint on the heart. Real emotional experiences are not measured by how often two people talk. They are measured by how deeply they change each other. Even years of silence cannot erase the lessons of a meaningful bond. That is why your influence stayed with them. Whether they admitted it or not, meeting you changed how they looked at themselves. It changed how they understood trust. It changed how they viewed love, closeness, and vulnerability. Some lessons come through success, others come through loss. The strongest ones often come through another human being. You became one of those lessons, not because you were trying to teach anything, but because your actions quietly showed possibilities they had stopped believing in. You showed them kindness could still be real. You reminded them honesty still mattered. You proved strength does not always need to be loud. Sometimes strength shows up as patience, compassion, and steady presence. Those are the things people remember long after the noise fades. And what comes next matters, because this is where the silence begins to mean something else. Anyone can create excitement for a short time. Very few inspire lasting respect. Even fewer make someone want to become a better version of themselves. That is the difference here. This was never only about romance. It was about growth. It was about two lives meeting at the exact moment something inside one of them was ready to wake up. But growth is rarely comfortable. It asks people to release old fear. It asks them to let go of stories they have repeated for years. It asks them to stop hiding behind excuses that once felt safe. That process can hurt. Sometimes people mistake that discomfort for a sign to leave, when in truth it is proof that change has already begun. This person felt that conflict every time they thought about you. Part of them wanted to protect the life they already knew. Another part could clearly see that staying the same was no longer enough. That inner struggle became impossible to ignore. Slowly, they started noticing how often your memory appeared in ordinary moments. They remembered conversations, the feeling around you, small details they never thought would matter. Those memories stayed alive because they were tied to real emotion. The mind naturally remembers what carries emotional weight. That is why some moments remain clear while so many others disappear. Without even trying, you became one of those unforgettable moments. And over time, another truth became impossible to avoid. Running did not bring peace. Ignoring the feeling did not create freedom. Pretending not to care did not change reality. The emotion stayed. The question stayed. The connection stayed. Sooner or later, every person reaches a point where avoiding the truth becomes more exhausting than facing it. Maybe this person is near that point now. Maybe they are finally beginning to understand that courage does not mean fear is gone. It means truth matters more. Instead of asking how to escape these feelings, they begin asking why they showed up in the first place. Instead of wondering how to forget you, they start wondering why forgetting was never possible. Instead of focusing only on what could go wrong, they slowly begin to imagine what could happen if they stopped hiding. This is often how real transformation begins. Strong relationships are not built because two people never feel fear. They are built because someone finally decides that honesty matters more than fear. That choice rarely happens overnight. It grows in silence. It grows in reflection, in long nights, in difficult questions, in private moments nobody else sees. Then one day, the weight of staying silent becomes heavier than the fear of speaking. And when that moment comes, everything can change. Words that once felt impossible become easier to say. Emotions that were hidden begin to rise. The walls that once felt necessary slowly begin to fall. That is why this bond never truly ended. It kept living under the surface, quietly shaping both your lives in ways neither of you may fully understand yet. Maybe you changed because of them too. Maybe this journey taught you patience, self-respect, strength, a deeper understanding of your own heart. Meaningful bonds rarely change only one person. They leave a mark on both lives. Even if the paths separate for a while, the lessons remain. That is what gives certain connections their lasting power. They remind us that love is not only about emotion, it is also about growth. It is about becoming more honest, more open, more willing to face ourselves. So if you are still here, listen closely, because the final truth may be the one that stays with you longest after this is over. In the end, what this person feels is deeper than simple attraction. It is gratitude for how you changed them. It is respect for who you have always been. It is admiration for the strength you showed without asking anyone to notice. Most of all, it is the quiet understanding that meeting you became one of the defining moments of their life. Whether they speak those words tomorrow, months from now, or much later, the truth inside them has kept growing. Some truths become stronger every time they are ignored. Some feelings become clearer with time instead of fading. And some people remain unforgettable because they woke a part of us that had been waiting for years to be seen. If this bond stayed alive through silence, distance, uncertainty, and unanswered questions, maybe it was never meant to disappear so easily. Maybe it was always meant to teach something. Maybe it was always meant to reveal hidden strength, quiet courage, and the value of something genuine. Life has a strange way of bringing certain people together for reasons that only make sense later. Looking back, we often realize that what once seemed like coincidence became the turning point that shaped our future. Maybe that is the deeper meaning of this whole story. It was never just about someone catching feelings. It was about two lives crossing paths and changing each other forever. And sometimes that is the greatest confession of all. Not simply saying I care about you, but realizing that because of you, I became someone I never thought I could become. That kind of bond is rare. That kind of change cannot be forced. And that is why, no matter how much time passes, some people never really leave our hearts. They stay there as a reminder that the deepest bonds are not always the loudest ones. Very often, they are the quiet ones that slowly transform us, helping us become stronger, wiser, and more open to the life waiting for us. Their silence was not always proof they felt nothing. The distance they created was not proof they had stopped caring. In many cases, that silence came from an inner struggle they did not know how to defeat. They were trapped between what they felt and what they believed they should do. They wanted to protect themselves, yet they could not escape the emotions growing inside. If these words are starting to feel familiar, stay with this a little longer. Because what comes next explains why this bond stayed alive even through long silence. Every time they tried to ignore their feelings, those feelings grew stronger. Every time they tried to move on, life placed another reminder in front of them. A familiar place, a memory, a song. Even a simple moment somehow brought you back into their mind. That is because some connections cannot be erased just by choosing to forget. Some experiences remain until we understand why they happened. Some people keep living in our hearts because they woke something that was waiting to be found. Until those emotions are faced honestly, the lesson stays unfinished. Maybe this is where the real story starts. It was never only about attraction, never only about timing, luck, or chance. It started with recognition, the quiet understanding that certain people enter our lives with purpose. They challenge how we think. They change how we see ourselves. They push us to discover parts of our heart that stayed hidden for years. And once that discovery happens, life rarely goes back to what it was before. Very often, the distance you felt from them was simply the result of emotions becoming too strong to understand. Many people know how to handle attraction because attraction feels safe. It can stay on the surface. It can be playful, easy, light. But real emotional vulnerability is something completely different. It asks a person to lower walls they spent years building. Many people know how to make others laugh. They know how to impress a room. They know how to appear confident, interesting, and successful. They become skilled at showing only the parts of themselves that seem acceptable. But letting another person see what lives under that image is much harder. It means risking disappointment. It means accepting that someone might see every weakness, every fear, every scar they tried to hide. That is where fear begins quietly. At some point, this person realized that you were seeing far more than the version of them they showed everyone else. You were not only seeing their confidence, you noticed the loneliness behind it. You looked beyond the smile they wore every day and sensed the sadness they rarely admitted. You recognized the exhaustion hidden under their strength. While others accepted the mask without question, you somehow saw through it. That made them uncomfortable. Most people spend years building emotional protection. They create identities that help them avoid rejection. They convince themselves they are fully independent. They believe if nobody gets too close, nobody can hurt them deeply. Over time, those habits become normal. They stop noticing the mask is even there. Then someone arrives and quietly sees through every layer without trying. You became that person. You saw beyond the image. You recognized the feelings they never spoke aloud. You noticed the silent pain hidden behind their strongest moments. You understood things they never explained with words. And that is exactly why this connection was never easy for them to forget.